He hasn't been there to vote on the SAVE Act. He hasn't been there to vote to support this war in Iran that this president started. He's not there to vote for a potential replacement of a Supreme Court justice. Not having Mitch McConnell show up isn't necessarily a bad thing, because he certainly doesn't show up to help the American people.
Very well said from Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. All right, everybody, this weird song and dance coming from the Republican Party, where they are collectively covering up the status of Senator Mitch McConnell, is now on day 45. And we now have a new letter and a new interview, not coming from the Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell, but coming from the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, demanding that Mitch McConnell show real proof of life. The reason I say real proof of life is because we've gotten some meek photos where his wife, Elaine Chao, is kind of propping him up over the past few weeks, but there's not much life or proof of life in these photos. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. He seems rather lifeless, devoid of any sort of autonomy, and he is supposed to be representing the people of Kentucky on the national stage, yet he's not showing up to any votes. If you or I went 45 days without showing up to work, just MIA entirely, number one, we would rack up a lot of medical debt, but he doesn't have to worry about that. Number two, we wouldn't have the type of paid or sick leave to take 45 days off and would be immediately fired. Number three, Senator Mitch McConnell has been the type of person to vote against the very same type of paid leave or sick leave that he is now taking advantage of. So again, we finally have videos today from Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear that I want to show you, because we need assertive leadership at a moment like this. I always run this thought experiment, but just flip the table for 1 second. If, for example, there was a Republican governor and then there was a Democratic senator who fell very ill at the age of 84 and was missing for 45 days, what would the Republican governor do? They would probably make up conspiracy theories, contribute to those conspiracy theories. I think that Trump would call that Republican governor personally and say, hey, I want you to hold a special election. And that Republican governor would break the law for Trump. I'm not saying that's what Andy Beshear would do. I'm just running you through the thought experiment. So on the Democratic side, I am all for using maximum pressure to say Mitch McConnell has to show real proof of life. That is what Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear is doing. As always, make sure you drop a like. I'm currently on a vacation, but we're keeping the videos rolling while I'm spending time with family, because it's important to break the news. It's important to make sure we are keeping everything pushing, and I want to keep fighting for a better future. So subscribe below, turn on post notifications, and it's funny, you can see both of my dogs sleeping. My elderly dog is always sleeping while I'm making these videos, and it's very, very cute. Here's my other dog as well. I think these dogs have more cognitive ability than Mitch McConnell at this moment. All right, back to the more serious subject matter at hand. I want to show you this clip of Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear talking about the disappearance of Senator Mitch McConnell 45 days in. He also wrote a letter directly to Senator Mitch McConnell's office and his staff saying, I am addressing this letter to Senator McConnell under the assumption that he is capable of reading and responding verbally and not incapacitated. We'll read this letter in just one moment, but let's watch this interview from this morning. I do want to point out, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear tries to swat down this idea that he could call a special election if McConnell passes away and that a Democrat could ever win that special election in Kentucky. And I just want to say, I agree. I don't think a Democrat would win a special election in Kentucky. It's not some grand theory of some crazy shit happening. It's more about Thomas Massie potentially running as an independent, or somebody who disagrees with the Trump platform, the McConnell platform, swiping in and taking this seat. I mean, there is a distortionary incentive created by our institutions where politicians want to cling on to power for as long as possible. Whether that's by taking money from special interest groups and lobbyists like AIPAC, they cling on to power that way. They cling on to power until they die in office. We need to be pushing back against this idea firmly and harshly. And let me show you Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear in this clip.
Well, do I understand it correctly that August 3rd is a key deadline here, that if Mitch McConnell continues in this capacity through the 3rd, then you will not have an opportunity to name a replacement until an actual election is held?
There's an argument out there that that's a date where I could not later call a special election. And for those that are really pushing this...
Will you challenge that?
Well, a lot of those that are pushing this are online and I think are under the impression that a Democrat in Kentucky might be able to win that election. It's been since 1992 that we have had a Democratic senator in Kentucky. You mentioned a lot of missed votes. I want to point out some other missed votes that might not be a bad thing. He hasn't been there to vote on the SAVE Act, which would tear voting rights away. He hasn't been there to vote to support this war in Iran that this president started and shouldn't be continuing. He's not there to vote for a potential replacement of a Supreme Court justice to continue a court that would tear down the Voting Rights Act. So listen, when you look at some of this, a vacancy, not having Mitch McConnell show up isn't necessarily a bad thing, because he certainly doesn't show up to help the American people.
Very well said from Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear. I am a huge fan of his style of communicating and his empathy-driven style of leadership. I do think we need to use all avenues available to keep applying pressure, which is what he does in this letter from the office of the governor. Dear Senator Mitch McConnell and Senate staff, I am addressing this letter to Senator McConnell under the assumption that he is capable of reading and responding verbally and not incapacitated by means of consciousness or cognition. That's a big ask right there. If the senator is unable to respond for either of those or other conditions, consider this letter a demand for his Senate staff to be honest and transparent with the people of Kentucky. I'll go one step further. He needs to resign immediately. You need to resign if you are 45 days incapacitated. I'm not saying that you should be, leaving office if you break your leg and you're in the hospital for 2 weeks, or if you're even sick. But if you are 84 years old, you repeatedly freeze, fall, and can't represent the people of your state, then yeah, step aside and let the new generation come in. Even if it is a Republican that disagrees with your platform, let the new generation be in power. These old school leaders are incredibly out of touch. Then they wonder why we're in endless wars, why our debt is ballooning, and why the economy sucks when half of them are dying in office or are currently in the hospital. This letter continues. It has now been 43 days since news of your hospitalization. This is coming from the governor to Senator Mitch McConnell. During that time, you have cast 0 votes, engaged in no official activities, and aside from 2 photos and corresponding statements, have made no effort to communicate with your Kentucky constituents or the nation. Even the attending physician's written statement does not discuss your actual condition, including whether you can speak, reason, or carry out your duties as a senator. I understand anyone's desire for privacy, but when you run for office and serve as one of the state's 2 senators, you willingly abdicate much of your personal privacy. That's the deal, and we all know it when we run. Important events are happening in our country right now during your absence. President Trump is stuck in a war of his own making and has greatly strengthened the very country he claims is a threat. Prices continue to rise, crushing Americans who are working hard but not getting ahead. Americans' voting rights are being eliminated by the Supreme Court and threatened by congressional action, all while you are absent and refuse to communicate clearly and directly to the people you serve. As governor of the state you serve, I am calling on you to directly and verbally address the people of Kentucky and provide proof of your capacity to serve or resign. I am further sending this letter to the Senate Majority Leader John Thune. Per our research, a vacancy in the Senate occurs when a senator dies, resigns, or is expelled by a vote of the Senate itself. If you are unwilling to voluntarily show that you have the capacity to serve, I will insist Leader Thune fully investigate your condition, report to the American people, and begin the process if warranted. He is laying down the law and pushing back in a hardcore manner. Here's another video from Governor Beshear a few weeks back.
I've had no official response, nothing sent to our office, no letter, no email. Now, he did put out a public statement, and that's a step in the right direction. But I view this the same way our families would have to deal with something like this. I mean, if anybody out there, your viewers, were in the hospital for a month, they'd have to call their boss at work and explain what's going on, explain what happened and what their path is to coming back. I've had no official...
It's honestly very well said. He still applies his empathy, but he says, we have to do something about this. Someone on Twitter said, remember how Republicans went totally batshit when Lloyd Austin took 3 days to notify the White House that he was in the hospital on an emergency, and it's been 41 days. This was a few days back. 41 days, now 45 days, and we're still not sure if Mitch McConnell is even alive. Chris Zazilla says, if McConnell is indeed pursuing an intense rehab program, he surely has the ability to record a 3-minute video updating people on his condition, right? I mean, we have not heard the man's voice since his June 14th fall. Somebody pointed out Mitch McConnell is on maternity leave. This happened in Ohio on a roadway. This is Desiree on the ground there.
Desiree Townsend here again outside of George Washington University Hospital. We are going to potentially be here In day 45 of Senator Mitch McConnell's hospitalization, his statement that came out yesterday said he has been discharged, not from the hospital, you got to read it very carefully, discharged from hospital care and into rehabilitation. There is a rehabilitation unit here, but question is, why is he still in this rehab and not moved to another facility?
Wait, so he was discharged from the hospital unit and put into the rehabilitation unit. There doesn't seem to be much of a meaningful difference there. It reminds me of this at the very beginning. If Mitch McConnell didn't break any bones in his fall, had no concussion, no tumor, apparently no stroke, no heart attack, no hemorrhage, according to his statement, what exactly is he recovering from? Why is he still in the rehabilitation unit? And why has it been 45 days where he hasn't posted any sort of video or anything of that manner? The Republicans will cover up anything as long as it allows them to maintain power. Then they will endlessly point fingers at the Democratic Party and act like we are the ones that have done anything wrong. One of the stories that I will not stop talking about right now, I mean, there's a few of them. Just bear with me for 1 second. Number one is Andrew and Tristan Tates, who the Trump admin helped get off of their charges a year ago and are now being arrested. Number two is Senator Mitch McConnell, as we are talking about in this video right now. And number three is Republican Representative Max Miller of Ohio, who poured boiling water on his wife, held a gun to her head, abused her and beat her, and reportedly, apparently, may have broken the clavicle of his 2-year-old daughter. Listen to this right here. There's a new investigative statement. Says in mid-March, 2 detectives, an Ohio County Division of Children and Family Services caseworker, and a Cleveland Clinic physician met on Zoom to discuss how the 2-year-old daughter of a congressman and granddaughter of a U.S. senator wound up with a broken collarbone. Quote, the bruising surrounding the clavicle fracture made the injuries suspicious, wrote one of the detectives who summarized the Zoom meeting. Further, someone on the call advised the injury would have required a high degree of impact to occur. Neither the child's father, Max Miller of Ohio, nor mother, a conservative policy advisor, Emily Moreno, daughter of Senator Bernie Moreno, admitted to knowing what caused their daughter's injury or that it occurred while their daughter was under their care. He said he had no clue. Max Miller had no clue how his daughter broke her collarbone. Miller's primary theory was that the bruising resembled marks from a seatbelt. Moreno, who discovered the bruises and took the child to the emergency room, suggested the cause may have been something more sinister. So the wife said that records of the investigation into potential child abuse show that the wife said to detectives that Miller had previously thrown hot water at her, shoved her, and held a gun to her head. Therefore, she couldn't rule out that Miller caused their daughter's fracture. Moreover, a child protection specialist reviewing the incident had characterized the bruising near the fracture as resembling a, quote, handprint. This is disgusting. This is despicable. This is abusive. And on top of all of that, the Republicans will endlessly cover that up. I am glad that Graham Plattner resigned on the Democratic side, but the Republicans have zero moral high ground to talk about Graham Plattner or anybody on the Democratic side when they are covering up for Max Miller, Matt Gaetz, Andrew Tate, Donald Trump himself. All of these people are embedded within the Trump universe, and it is despicable. I'm going to go enjoy the rest of my day. Chris Mowry is now going to take over, so turn on post notifications below.